so let's just go over what you're gonna need for this album. I am using medium weight chipboard, which I get from Grafix. I believe it's Grafix. I just get mine off of Amazon. It's 12 by 12 medium weight chipboard. Okay, you're gonna need 2 sheets of 12 by 12. And then your base cardstock, so whatever color you're using for your album. I'm using Craft that you would normally use for your scrapbook albums to build the pages and all the interactive elements. So I didn't count how many I used, but it was definitely less than 30. I can tell you that because I had a 30 pack that I opened when I started this, and I still have a bit left. So 12 by 12 cardstock, okay? Now you are of course going to need, you're gonna need your cutting board, whatever you use to cut, and you're gonna need a scoring board, and you're going to need your scoring tool, okay? So cutting board, scoring board, and scoring tool. I have these wrap guides that help me wrap my pieces of chipboard perfectly even. It's totally optional, but I have one that's 1.5 inches wide, and then I have a couple that are 1 inches wide, or 1 inch wide, I should say. And those are just gonna help me when my cardstock is on my scoreboard. I can do this, and then I can glue my chipboard down, and I've got a perfect 1 inch border. So those are optional, but I always use those depending on how I wrap my chipboard, that is. Of course, you're gonna need a cutting mat. I have various sizes. I have larger ones. You'll need, you know, a semi-large one. And then I have one that's got a soft side so that I can poke holes through items. So I just poke holes straight through the soft side, through the paper into the soft side. So I use these 2 cutting mats and then something to poke holes with. This is a scoring tool, but it came with a set of 3, but one of them is so skinny, it's like it's a poke. I don't think you could ever use that to score. It would rip the paper. Okay, you need an eyelet setter. I have this one, and I also have this one. Of course, we need magnets. Glue. I used a couple paper clips in this album to keep a couple of the flaps closed. I use twine in various places to keep closure pieces tied together. So this is just basic twine. You could use ribbon, you could use whatever you have. A mechanical pencil, if you are, you're gonna be labeling your pieces. And the mechanical pencils are my favorite because the lead is always nice and sharp. Pair of nice precision scissors for fussy cutting. I have a regular pair of scissors if I need them. And I did ink the edges of all of my decorative paper. That's optional, of course. And I have a super sharp craft knife. Oh, and of course my bone folder. That is like probably one of the most important pieces. This is for creasing your folds and for just getting things to adhere down really well. I also use some glue dots on my cover, some dimensional foam. So I have, not glue dots, dimensional foam. So I have those here, okay? And I think that's just about everything. I keep all of my go-to items in this little basket, so I can just grab them very easily whenever I need them. So that is your list of, oh, and of course you're gonna need eyelets. I use eyelets for all my closure pieces through which we thread the twine and then tie that off. Not a whole ton, maybe a dozen or less. Okay, so that is our list of to-do. We are gonna, oh, and a ruler. If I think of anything else, I'll share. And then I also use this sewing ruler. It's wonderful for measuring a certain distance from the edges of your paper or your chipboard. So if I need to make a line that's exactly 2 inches away, I just line up the 2 inch mark and I make my 2 inch mark with the edge of my chipboard and I make my line. This thing is also optional, but it's highly recommended, highly loved. And of course you need double-sided score tape. I primarily use 3/8 of an inch and a 1/2 inch, and then this larger 2-inch, I will use this to cover my, larger chipboard pieces when I'm wrapping the cover. That's really the only time I use score tape is when I'm wrapping the cover. I'm a glue gal because glue dries permanent. Tape is never dry. Tape is always tacky, and so it will come up after time. But I do use it for the cover. I think that's really important. In addition to glue, I use both, but I think having both for the cover is important. So you do need score tape as well. We are going to jump right into making the cover of this folio. Okay, so you need to cut from your 12 by 12 medium weight chipboard. You need to cut 2 pieces that are 10.5 by 8 3/4. I would suggest, as you can see, chipboard is very flimsy in one direction, and in the other direction it's not so flimsy, it's pretty rigid. Because we're going to be opening the cover a lot, you know, we're constantly doing this, I want that rigidity, if that's a word, I want that to be going in this direction. I don't have to worry about it being flimsy from top to bottom because it's attached to these pieces. So that's not going to be, it's not really going to get flimsy in that direction because, like I said, they're all going to be attached together. But it could easily get flimsy in this direction because you're constantly opening it and closing it. So I like it to be rigid in this direction and then cut your 8 3/4 so that when you are done, it's flimsy this way, okay? It's rigid this way. And then you need a piece from your scraps after cutting these 2 that measures 10.5 by 2 1/4. You also need your wrap pieces, okay? So you need 2 pieces that measure 12 inches by 5 1/4. That's these 2 here. And then you need 1 piece that measures 12 inches by 10 3/4. So 12 by 5 1/4, 12 by 10 3/4. All right, so let's go ahead and put score tape on our cover pieces. And I am just going to use 2, I believe this is 2.5 inches. You can use whatever size you have. I don't like the giant sheets. I think they're, well, for me personally, they're too hard to manage. But I don't want to go like a 1/2 inch because then it's taking me longer to get it done. So this is like a good compromise for me. And as you can see, I'm leaving space around the edges. It doesn't have to be full coverage. I'm leaving space around the edges so that I can supplement with glue, because for me personally, that's really important because the glue is what dries, what has a permanent hold, you know, it dries, so it's got a nice good hold forever and ever. And let's see if I can fit one more on there. Maybe not. Burnish that tape down really well. just trying to leave a border all the way around. If you're wondering why I'm removing the backing to this tape, it's because this one was going to overlap it in order that I could leave a border. And I don't want it to overlap the backing. So just make it work. Whatever tape you have, just make it work. Doesn't have to be full coverage, but I do leave a border around the edges, okay? And then for my spine, I do apply full coverage. I think that's really important. So for this one, I will make sure I'm lined up completely with the edge. Oops. Okay. And then I need to grab my, looks like maybe my 1/4 inch score tape. Okay, so we have applied full coverage to our spine piece, and let's burnish that down really well. If your tape is too small, just keep laying pieces directly next to each other until you get to the edge, and if you go over the edge with your tape, just do this and use your craft knife to cut off the excess, okay? Burnish that down really well. Okay, so we've got all 3 pieces covered, so we are just going to go ahead and start wrapping our cover pieces. Okay, so we are going to take one of those cover pieces, our scoring board, and one of our large wrap pieces. And if you are curious how I cut my wraps, I like to have exactly 1 inch on all 4 sides of my chipboard, okay? However, if you've already done the math, you might have realized that this is not big enough because I don't have chipboard that's 12.5. In order to have 1 inch on all sides, I would need 12.5 by 10 3/4. So instead of having 1 inch here and here, I'm gonna have 3/4 of an inch. So I'm just gonna use 3/4 inch wrapping guides. That way I will have 1 inch to the left and the right, and I'll have even space on the left and right and even space on the top and bottom. So normally I cut my wrap so there's 1 inch, 1 inch, 1 inch, 1 inch on all 4 sides of my chipboard. But again, since this is 10.5 tall, I don't have 12.5 paper. So I'm just making sure I've got an even amount of space on all 4 sides. So that's 1 inch to the left and the right, 3/4 of an inch at the top and the bottom. All right, so I am going to go ahead and remove my backing. And then I'm going to put glue generously around the edges, and fill in anywhere where you didn't have tape, because remember, you don't have to have full coverage. You could have just done 1/2 inch strips, and in between the strips just put glue, okay? And then we're going to take that piece and we are going to butt it right up against the top and left edges. There we go. Okay, let's burnish that real well. We're going to take our bone folder and we are going to, with our chipboard face down, doesn't matter what the orientation is really, we are going to score our paper into the edge of the chipboard. So you have to find the right amount of pressure so that it's gentle enough that you don't rip your paper, which I find it very hard to rip my paper because I'm not using flimsy paper. But you still need to be careful. So that is what it looks like when you score your paper into the edge of your chipboard. Do that to all 4 sides. Okay, so now that you have all 4 sides scored, turn it back over, and you are basically going to fold all 4 of the sides in. I like to work it a little bit, so I'm holding the chipboard down, and I'm using my bone folder to kind of start bending the side in toward the chipboard, okay? So I'm kind of training it to fold, you could say. And then burnish that all the way to the top, all the way to the bottom. And what I love about this method of wrapping is the edges are so clean. They're clean, crisp edges. I know it probably takes a little bit more time. Another method that I really love, that I don't use often, is to use bookbinder's tape and just wrap the edges. Just wrap your 4 edges of each piece. It's much quicker, but I just love this. I love how this method gives you really crisp edges, which you'll see when we're done. Okay, so now you have 4 squares in each corner that was created when your fold lines intersected each other. So you're just going to take your scissors, you're going to cut those out directly up to the chipboard. My scissors are kind of dull here. And now what I'm going to do, now that I've got those cut out, I'm going to miter the right edge of every single one of these 4 flaps. So the right side. So I'm going to start right here. Let me get this one out of the way. And to do that, I'm just going to butt my scissors up against here. Just make certain you're not cutting into this folded edge. Just like that. I'm going to turn it, and then I'm going to do the right edge of this one. So I'll fold this down out of the way. I'm not cutting into that folded edge by any means. And then to do the left side of each of those flaps, we just have to turn our chipboard so it's face down. Now we're looking at the opposite left sides of those flaps. Same thing, we'll fold the right one down to get it out of the way. Miter, 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 and miter. Okay. Okay, so now we probably could have, should have laid score tape down first, because now we're gonna have to make sure our score tape miters as well. But that's okay. I always forget that step, always. Okay, so we are going to lay score tape. I'm just going to overlap that mitered edge so I can just cut it. Actually, I don't want to use 1/2" score tape here. Too late for this one. But choose score tape that gives you a good space. Choose a size score tape that gives you a good space above and below the tape itself, because again, glue is my primary adhesive because it dries and therefore is permanent. Tape is always tacky, so I don't like to rely on just tape. I should have gone a little bit smaller on that flap. So for this one, I will go a little bit smaller, but I will go ahead and do the 1" flaps. See how I have a much nicer space there? And see how also if we had just laid our tape before we cut our corners off, we wouldn't have to do this. We wouldn't have to worry about our, wouldn't have to worry about mitering our tape. All right, that one is already mitered, great. Okay, so let me go get a smaller tape for the other flap, the other 3/4" flap. Here we go. Perfect. And I will show you why I like to have that space. Okay, so burnish your tape down really, really well. All right, and then when I actually wrap, I start with my 2 shorter sides. I guess it doesn't really matter, but I do like to actually, I'm going to do the inside. I'm going to do the longer edges first because, yes, I'll show you why when we get to that point. It's not a huge big deal, but there is a reason why I'm doing it this way. Okay, so remove your first tape backing, and then this is why I like to have some space on the bottom and the top of the tape, because I want to run a bead of glue right up against that chipboard to get a really good hold. And then I like to run glue on the edge of the cardstock, okay? And you can take that and you can adhere it down. Use your bone folder to get a good hold. If that glue seeps out at the corner, beautiful. That means it is spreading all the way to the edge and you're gonna get a great hold. In fact, I purposely get it to spread all the way to the edge. And then I am going to flatten out the outside edge of that cardstock against the chipboard. Absolutely beautiful, crisp wrap. And I'm going to do the other side in the exact same manner. Remove your score tape. Put glue directly up against the chipboard. And then on the edge, adhere that down. Okay, and then we will do the top and the bottom in the exact same manner. Okay, so now we have a beautiful wrapped cover. Okay, and the reason that I did the sides first is just because when we adhere the spine to this, it's gonna be like this. So I didn't want that to interfere with the mitered edge of this side piece, so I put the side piece down first, and then the top and bottom over it, so that when we adhere that spine, we won't have two pieces of paper that are directly identical sitting on top of one another. Okay, so wrap your other cover piece in the exact same manner, and then we will continue. Okay, so now we have our two cover pieces wrapped, okay? So let's go ahead and do the spine piece, which is almost the same way, but not quite. So don't just jump ahead and wrap that one yet, because it does have some different steps. First of all, the wrap piece is cut so that there's 1.5 inches on the left and the right. Normally, like I said, I would do 1 inch all around, except the spine piece is always the exception. You're always going to have 1.5 inches to the left and the right. Okay, so to the left, 1.5. And normally, like I said, I would do a 1 at the top, but because my paper is not 12.5 inches wide, I have to do 3/4. So all I'm doing is making sure that I have an even space at the top and the bottom, and then I will have 1.5 inch on the left and the right. So our spine piece has full coverage tape, so there's no glue. Let's just remove that backing. And we're just going to stick it straight down. It really does not have to be perfect. I might be a little bit of a perfectionist. Okay, let's burnish that really well. Okay, and we are going to take with the chipboard face down again, we are going to score all 4 sides. We are going to score the paper against all 4 sides of the chipboard. Okay, so let's go ahead now that we've scored our edges against the sides, scored our cardstock against the edges of the chipboard. We can go ahead and fold those 4 sides. So far, everything is exactly as it was with the cover pieces. So the thing that we're going to do different here is we are not going to cut off our 4 corners, okay? We are just going to glue the top down and the bottom down like it is. All right, so I'm going to take a piece of glue and run it all the way across. A piece of tape. Did I just say a piece of glue? I am leaving space above and below for my glue. We haven't mitered anything. We haven't cut any corners off. Burnish that down really well. Okay, and then let me take off the tape backing. Now I'm going to run my glue against that chipboard, okay, and against the entire outside edge. Fold that down. Okay, and then as I miter this, I am going to miter the paper into the edge of the chipboard again, just like that. Okay. So I'm mitering into the edge of the chipboard, like so. I'm sorry, burnishing. I often use the wrong term. Burnishing. I know what they mean, I just the wrong word comes out. Okay. Remove your tape backing, put glue right up against the edge of the chipboard, and then along the entire outside edge of the cardstock. Adhere that down. And again, as you burnish, make sure you burnish the edge of the paper right into the sides of the chipboard. Okay, so I am going to let this dry. We are going to do a very slight miter here and here, but I want to let that dry for a few minutes. It's good timing too, because I'm sure you can hear my puppy getting anxious. She wants me to play with her. Okay, so we're going to do a slight miter to the edges of the top and bottom, okay? So the way that I do that is I just go from the edge of the chipboard underneath out, and just a slight one. Make sure that you're not cutting into this folded edge right here, okay? Just like that. Okay, so that's what you have. This is what your spine looks like. So as you can see, the two edges are mitered here and here. Okay, so now we can bring out our two cover pieces. Actually, let's just bring out one. So the way that we are going to put these together, the chipboard is going to be face down, okay? And again, orientation does not matter, whatever, okay? The chipboard is going to be face down, and we are basically going to take our cover piece, whichever one you want to start with. I'm right-handed, so I'm holding one in my right hand, and I'm working on the right side of the spine. Let's go ahead and take our bone folder, and with the chipboard face down, again, let's burnish this paper down really well against the edge of that chipboard underneath, because we are going to take this and butt it directly up against. Okay, and in order to prepare to do that, we're going to apply just a lot of glue, okay? But you don't want your glue to go directly up against that fold, because we don't want it in that crease. And I'll show you why in a minute, but so as you can see, I'm going all along the three edges and then pretty close to that crease, but not up against it, like so. And then just be very generous with your glue. Okay, so then we will just take this, and you don't want to stick it down and then slide it, because you're just going to slide glue up against that crease. So line it up first while it's not stuck down. Once you've got it over top, pretty much lined up, then stick it down. okay? And you do want to make sure that it's obviously not on top of that piece, but just right up into the, right up against the edge of it. Okay. So give that a nice burnish. Turn that over. Give that a nice burnish to begin with. And then before I finish burnishing, I'll show you why I didn't want glue. If there was glue in that crease, what would happen is when we do that, it might rip the fibers of the paper, okay? But you do want to get it pretty close. All right, so burnish that really, really well. Get your glue spread out to all four edges. All right, again, I'm right-handed, so I'm just moving this around so that I have the other piece in my right hand, and I wrapped this one wrong on accident. I left an inch at the top and only a ½ inch at the bottom, if you're wondering why that looks funky. But no big deal. I made it work. Okay, so again, take your bone folder and make sure you have a nice crease against the edge of that chipboard underneath here. Take your glue. And then make sure that you don't have glue in the crease. Perfect. If you did, you could just wipe it away. All right, beautiful. And then I am going to take some large binder clips. This is completely optional. Do this just to make sure that that gets a good bind. So I'm just going to do it in the two corners of this cover piece and the two corners of this cover piece. Okay, just to get it a good, make sure it's really secured down with that spine piece. Okay, so next what we want to do is we want to cover our spine here, and I thought I was recording for the past 10 minutes and apparently I wasn't. So let me catch you up. So I've cut a piece of cardstock that measures, it measures 10.5 by 8.5, okay? And the reason I chose the 8.5 length is because I want it to overlap my spine by about 1.5 inches. So 8.5 is perfect. As you can see, it overlaps by about 1.5 inches. And it's 10.5 because I want it to go from edge to edge. So once you've cut it, line it up, make sure it's a nice fit. If you have to cut a tiny sliver off of one of the, either the top or the bottom, so that it fits better, go ahead. That's exactly what I had to do. Tiny itty bitty little sliver here, okay? Then you're going to apply full coverage tape to this piece. That's really important. Burnish that down really, really, really well. Remove your tape backing, and then we're gonna stick it down onto our book. This one does not want to come off. There we go. Okay, let's get our book back out. And then you are just going to very carefully line it up. I'm gonna come down here a little bit so I don't get my head in the frame. Okay, so edge to edge as best as you can. And I think that looks pretty good. Beautiful. It does not go past either of my edges. It's exactly what we wanted. And take care to burnish that down really well, okay? I can get away with that because my cardstock is craft colored. All right, and then all we need to do is we just need to very gently, very, very gently score our creases again. See, it looks like I did get a little bit of glue in there. I didn't realize it. And so now that I've opened up my book, it tore the paper a little bit. I mean, it's just the very outside fibers, not a big deal. Okay. And there are those beautiful crisp edges I was telling you earlier that I love so much. I just love that look, which is why I like wrapping this way. Even though it is more time consuming, I just love it. Okay, so there we go. There's our folio cover. Okay, so let's jump into the inner workings of the folio. We are going to start with the two main panels, the two top front panels that you see when you open the folio, okay? So at this point, make sure you stop to cut all of your pieces if you have not already. So we are going to be working on this main panel A right here, which covers up the whole left side of the folio, and main panel B right here, which covers the whole right side of the folio. So main panel A, main panel B, we are going to work on those two and all of the things that are attached to it, and then we're going to glue those to our book. And the reason we're not going to glue the panels first is because it just gets very hard attaching things and decorating without bending our spines here. It's just so much nicer to work with a flat surface on a single piece of paper. So cut everything that goes with main panel A and cut everything that goes with main panel B. And then once you've done that, you are ready for part 2. See you there.